Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome back. Welcome back to the Porsche Cooled Podcast. My name is Michael Barth and this is Owner Stories Day. We're up to number 66 of the Owner Stories series. And today I'm going to be joined actually very, very shortly because I'm running late. It's 4 minutes before I have to connect to Zoom and start speaking to Chris. And Chris is going to be coming in from Tucson in Arizona in the US. Chris is a first-time Porsche owner. He's got a good story. He's maybe a little bit younger than a lot of other Porsche owners. Maybe not everyone, but the majority. And he's managed to get his first Porsche at a young age, and he's going to tell us all about his story. So let me get Chris on the line, and let's start talking about his Porsche Cooled owner's story. Okay, welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to Owner Stories. Welcome back to number 66 of the Owner Stories series. And I am joined by Chris today, and Chris is coming in from the US. He's coming in from Tucson in Arizona. Good evening, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing all right.
Thanks for coming on the podcast. And I just want to tell the listeners that I've been pretty terrible to Chris. I've actually cancelled him twice, so we managed to hook this up today. It's the 4th of January. We're recording a little bit earlier. These are always recorded a little bit in advance. How's the weather in Tucson this time of year?
It's cold for here. There's snow up on the mountain, Mount Lemmon, that we kind of surrounded by, but got down into the 20s-ish, but it's nice.
So I just want to let the listeners know, when we get into your story, Chris, and when they start seeing your Instagram pictures, which I'm going to share very shortly, your Instagram handle, they'll see that you drive your car, in the snow. You drive your car a lot. And I want to talk about the original owner that you mentioned to me about. We'll get into that and how it all came about. But before we get there, let's just get straight into it. And let's start about where it all began for you. We've had a lot of owners on Owner Stories now. Like I said, we're up to number 66 with you. And some people have started very late in life. Some people have started early in life. When did you first start noticing Porsche? And I just want to tell the listeners, you're quite young and you can tell them your age. When did you start first noticing Porsche? And when did you first realize that, hey, maybe that's something that I want to get into?
Yeah, so I just turned 30 a couple weeks ago. And so first time I really noticed Porsche. So I grew up in Las Cruces, New Mexico, which is down the southern middle part of the state. And it's, not a very big city at all, maybe 200,000 people at that time.
Right.
And, no Porsche dealership. I think there was one down in El Paso, but you just didn't see them. And so the first Porsche I can really remember seeing was I was on like a elementary school field trip to like a greenhouse. And they had, I believe it would have been a 993 parked out front. And I saw that and remember thinking that was cool. And then when I was in high school, my neighbor, who was an anesthesiologist, I think he might've bought it new in 997, which he only had for a couple months. And then he decided that was too flashy for him. And he, I think, got a 964. Right. And his kids would go take that for joyrides in the middle of the night and do like 90 miles an hour up and down our little farm road. But there really just weren't that many Porsches around. And so I think really what got me super interested in them was, I would have graduated high school in 2010. And so that was back when, right at the beginning, when air cooleds were really starting to kick off.
Yeah.
And of course I've listened to a bunch of these owner stories. And so I was trying to think about it. And I really think my getting into Porsches really had to do with watching way too much Top Gear and looking at all the stuff that was coming out online when I was in college with, sites like Speed Hunters and,
yep.
and all the cool stuff people were doing with Porsches. And of course, like back then I was like, oh man, I really want a 993 because, it's modern enough. It has a 6-speed, really cool. Same, and I saw this when I was a kid, but yeah, the prices, I could just sit there in engineering school and watch them just climb and climb and climb and climb. So,
that was the beginning of it, wasn't it? 2010 is about the beginning of it. Yeah.
I can remember when I was in high school, it was like, oh yeah, 993s, that makes sense. It's like you could pick up a nice one for under $30,000 and
yes,
you did it easily. But it was just still a used car back then. But now it's just gone crazy.
So you had the neighbor who had the 997. He traded it for a 964. But like you said, you're watching Top Gear, you're watching stuff on YouTube, you're watching all these shows, And I guess around that time it's the 997, right? It's the 997 on Top Gear and things like that. It's probably 996s. It's probably comparison drives with the 996, but it's 997 getting into 991.
Yeah, more 997 when I was really starting to pay attention, because before then, I'd really been focused on like muscle cars. Right. My first car was a little Nissan pickup truck, and I had that for a while. And then my senior year of high school, my dad got me a 95 Mustang GT.
Okay.
With a 5-liter. And it was this really pretty kind of opalescent silver. Right. And I had that for a bit because my dad is a huge car guy. He's had so many different Mustangs I don't even know. Right now he's actually got a Bronco on order, which would be pretty cool. But yeah, I had that Mustang for a little while, and then I actually decided I'd rather have a motorcycle. So we got rid of that, and I bought myself a Suzuki SV650.
Okay.
And then that was my only vehicle through almost all of college.
So you were riding the bike.
Yeah.
So the Mustang, what happened to the Mustang then? You sold it?
Yeah, we just sold it. I decided I'd rather have a bike.
It seems like there is a trend though, and I guess with the the US owners, that the muscle car is always the first car. It seems to be the Mustang is one of the first cars you get. It's like it's always on the list of most people.
Yeah.
For obvious reasons. So
there's a billion of them, and they're cheap enough. And
they're cheap enough, right? Yeah.
It's a good car.
Good driver's car.
They're plenty big, and you can fit a bunch of stuff in them. It has definitely more of a usable back seat than my car, but yeah, no, it was a good car.
Okay, so you have the Nissan pickup, you have the Mustang, then you're on your bike and you're just riding your bike, right? You're enjoying your bike.
Yep.
What makes you think then? What makes you think then that the Porsche will be the car that actually suits you, that's going to be right for your lifestyle? Because you've got a pretty active lifestyle, right? Tell the listeners about what you enjoy doing.
So there's a couple steps in between that bike and the car. So I did get my dad had this old Ford F-250.
Okay.
That he was the original owner, and I was actually brought home from the hospital in that truck. And so my last year of college, I took over that, and I've still got it. And it's a great truck. I'm never gonna get rid of that thing. I love it. It's 1990. It's got the 7.5 liter V8 it's 4-wheel drive with 2 gas tanks and a manual transmission. So it's
that's the car, Chris, that you'll pass on to your children.
Oh yeah,
is that how it works?
Definitely. It's great because it's so easy to work on. Having bought, I've got 2 Ducatis right here because they came after the bikes and the truck. But kind of going into those and into the car, it makes taking care of the truck a lot easier to justify because it's like every time I'm going to do something on the truck, I play a fun game where I figure out how much that would cost on my car, and it makes it a lot easier to swipe the credit card.
Okay, so you had the Suzuki bike. So you sold the Suzuki, or you still have the Suzuki?
No, I've still got it.
You still got that? And then you got the truck. Your dad gave you the truck you brought home from the hospital in. And then you bought 2 Ducatis. What Ducatis do you own?
I have a 999S.
Oh, really?
And an ST4. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know you had a 999S. That's a great bike.
Oh, it's fantastic. Well, see, before I was really watching too much Top Gear, Cycle World was what I'd spend my allowance on. And, when I was impressionable in middle school, that was the bike ripping the wheelies on the cover of Cycle World. So that was a dream bike. So when I got my first engineering job, I was so dumb and so irresponsible, but I managed to pull it off. I found this bike for sale at the Ducati Bellevue in Washington.
Right.
And I must have gotten rejected for like 5 different credit applications, but the credit union finally gave me one, and I paid it off pretty quickly. But it was the dream bike when I was a kid, and it's been great.
Those bikes in Australia are quite expensive. They've gone up in value, right? They're not a cheap bike, the 999.
I bought mine in 2015, right, and I have not really paid attention to prices at all.
Right.
I think when I bought it, it was probably $8 or $9 grand.
Okay.
And I was the third owner. It had hardly been ridden. It had like maybe 9,000 miles on it.
Wow, that's great.
But it was one of the very early ones.
That's kind of the best thing with bikes, isn't it? If you get the right one, they really haven't been ridden. People have bought them because they like the look of them. They sit them in their garage, they pamper them, and then they sell them.
See, the thing with Ducatis too is, you save a ton on insurance because, people who buy Ducatis don't wrap them around trees. You compare insurance rates for like a comparable Yamaha, Suzuki, Honda, whatever. It's going to be literally twice as much.
Isn't that what they say about Ferrari insurance as well? That Ferrari insurance isn't that high? That's what I think someone told me that once. I didn't really believe it, but maybe that's true as well. I'll just tell the listeners, Chris, your Instagram so they can check it out while we're talking and they can see your car and they can see the bikes. So it's C_Klaus, Klaus. So it's C_Klaus, Klaus. I'll put the description. I'll put the link in the description as well so everyone can go and look at your Instagram and give you a follow. All right. So you've got the two bikes. Three bikes, I should say, the two Ducatis plus the Suzuki. You got the three bikes, You've got the pickup, you've got the truck. So then you think, okay, I've got another space in my garage. What are you going to start searching for? And did you start searching for a Porsche first, or were you looking at something else before you thought about the Porsche?
So how that went is when I first graduated, I moved up to Washington, and I was only there for a little while, and then ended up getting out of that job and lived in Idaho for a bit with my folks. And then I ended up down here in Tucson, and I'd been in Tucson for probably three years it would have been. And, I was making a pretty good amount of money, and my truck kept breaking down, and I was, every time I needed to go do something, I had to fix something on it. And so I was getting real sick of that. And so I started to think, oh, maybe I'll get something newer. And so I wanted, because I'm into, besides, motorcycles, the car, the truck, I'm also into rock climbing, and then I like to go snowboarding.
Right.
And so I wanted something that was all-wheel drive for snowboarding, and then I like driving manual. My truck's a manual, and then I didn't really need 4 doors, and so which is a very short list, and so
Very short.
I was looking at buying new cars, and so I looked into the Audi A5 or a Mercedes C-Class Coupe, and then the Golf R.
Right.
And I went to the Audi dealership here in town, and turns out I don't fit in an A5.
Oh, really?
I'm 6'4", which is I think a little shy of 2 meters, and so all my height's in my torso, and all these new cars have these sunroofs, okay. And so I didn't fit in it. The roof's
low. Yeah, the roof is low.
Yeah, I have to sit there leaning over to my right, and so I didn't fit in that. And then I went over to the Mercedes dealership, didn't fit in that either. I fit in the Golf just fine, and that one would have a manual, which would have been a benefit. But I was talking to my dad about it. He's like, Chris, you've always wanted a Porsche. You're not married, you're making good money, like go buy one. You can do it now.
Yeah. I
was like, yeah, you're right. And so I started the hunt, and that kind of led me to the 996 C4Ss, because the 997s at that time were a little bit above my price range, and this would have been like late 2018, early 2019.
Okay. And
so I kind of boiled it down to the 996. And I wanted the C4S mostly because of the all-wheel drive. You learn more about them, and you learn a bunch of other benefits. But I mostly wanted for the all-wheel drive. And so
hang on for a second, Chris. So what made you think that you would fit into a 911? Had you sat in one before?
Oh, I went to the Porsche dealership and told them.
Right.
They had a 997 sitting out on the lot.
Okay.
And I told them, hey, I'm looking into buying one of these cars. I want to make sure I can fit in one first.
Right.
Okay. And so the sales girl was like, oh, well, we've got this one over here. And what was so funny, it was just bucketing down rain at the time. And this poor girl was like standing outside of the car in the rain while I'm like, yep, I fit it here. This is great. Not going to buy it. Thanks, bye.
And that's the thing about 911s, isn't it? You do sit so low in the cabin. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even if it has a sunroof, it doesn't take up all that well, the 997s and 996s don't. They don't take up all the extra roof space. They're
No,
not like
mine's
down.
got the sunroof. It's not, it's not a problem at all.
Yeah, and mine has too. It's like, it just sort of, I mean, I'm only 6 foot. I'm not as tall as you. But, there does seem to be a lot of room in a 911, a lot more room than most people realize when you are actually tall. And especially if you're long in the torso, like you said, there is an abundance of room. So you go to the Porsche dealer, you work out that you can fit. So then you realize you want the 996. You want a Carrera 4, a Carrera 4, or a Carrera 4S. Not so easy to find. Still quite a rare car.
Yeah, so I started, all the usual places online, and all the ones I was finding were in Texas and California.
Right.
And like the one that got away, that the Mercedes dealership in Santa Fe, New Mexico, there was a gorgeous cobalt blue one.
Oh, nice.
And I called them, hours too late. And it just had a fresh windshield put on too. Oh man, that was definitely the one that got away. But most of them were in Texas and California. And then one Saturday, I'm sitting there doing all my searches in the afternoon, and one pops up here in Tucson.
Right.
And so I saw it, and I was like, "That's the car." I knew it as soon as I saw it, and I emailed it was on Auto Trader, I believe, and I emailed the guy, and I was like, "Hey, I've been searching for this car for months. This is perfect. I'm here local, blah, blah, blah."
Yep.
And so I send that off, and I get a call about 9 a.m. on Sunday. And he's like, "Hey, I had somebody come by, and he was trying to lowball me. I told him, get out of here and stop wasting my time. I've got another guy coming by at about 2 this afternoon. But if you want to come look at it, you can." And I was just like, "Can I come now?" And he's like, "Yeah, sure." And so I just dropped everything and drove all the way across town. And, as soon as I'd seen it, I'd cashed out my investment account, and I was like, "This is the car." And so,
because you're talking about a Carrera 4S, and you're talking about a Carrera 4S in manual, which is even rarer, right? Because most of them are tips. Most of them were tips, and most people spec'd them in tips. It's a bit like the turbo, the 996 turbo. There's a lot of tips. There's not as many manuals as you think. Yeah. So it's quite rare. Does he realize that he's got something quite rare? Does he price it accordingly?
So the price back then, and I'm not too squeamish about talking numbers, but so this was April of 2019.
Yes.
And the car had 67,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
Original owner.
Yeah.
And he had bought it at Porsche of Tucson. It'd only ever been serviced there, except for like the IMS bearing. He had, got to take that to an independent. But, and so he was asking 33 for it, which was slightly high at the time for the mileage. And, but original owner and that kind of history, I've got every receipt back to new, and you just can't replace that. So, especially once I actually got to see the condition of the car in person. And so, when he called me, besides saying I'm going to be there, before I got to that, I was trying to prove to him that, I was going to take care of his car, because he really cared about it. Come to find out, he was selling it because he'd had some health issues.
Right.
It was definitely his baby. It's not like he really wanted to sell. He just hadn't been driving it at all because of his health.
Okay.
And so, go over there, check out the car. It's, perfect. Like he was extremely fastidious with the car. It had never been driven in the rain. Nobody had ever ridden in the back seat.
Which I'll tell the listeners. Chris sent me that by DM on Instagram and told me that, and I thought, how do you drive a 911 in Tucson and don't drive it in the rain, or don't drive it in bad weather, right? Surely that limits the amount of time you can drive this car.
Yeah, I really don't get it. He had another car, and then he said a lot of the mileage were back and forth to California to go visit one of his daughters, but he's a really super interesting guy. It was his third 911 he'd had. The first one was an early 80s turbo that he'd bought used.
Okay.
And I don't really know how long he had that one, but his second 911 was actually a speed yellow Aero Kit 993 C2, I believe, that he took European delivery on.
Wow.
And he had actually sold that to another young engineer. And so he kind of liked the, continuing on that, but he got rid of it because, it is very hot in Tucson. And he said that the cooling system just really wasn't up to it, especially sitting in traffic. And then also speed yellow with an aero kit, is kind of a polar opposite from my car, which we haven't even really discussed all the specs on it yet, but it's very kind of flashy. And so he got a little bit more attention than he was wanting.
So he's a true enthusiast, and he's owned 3. This one he's owned since new. I mean, it's a rare find. In itself, it's a rare find, isn't it, Chris? I mean, you've got a 996, you've got a Carrera 4S, you've got a manual. Maybe I'm getting confused with the weather in Tucson. It's really hot summers and really cold winters, is it?
Hot summers. It's cold right now, but usually it's pretty mild winters. We get a lot of snowbirds here for a reason.
Right.
Folks that come down from the Midwest or whatever. But and it does rain. We have what's called the monsoon season, and but it doesn't rain that much, but it is kind of a shame that he wasn't, enjoying it a bit more.
So there's still, I mean, it's different for you because you drive your car all the time, but there's still enough driving days in the year for people who don't want to drive it in bad weather.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Absolutely. All right. So tell the listeners exactly what the gentleman had. So you go to his house, you see this car, you want it straight away. You're working out how to get the money to him as quickly as possible before someone else comes in and buys it from you. So what exactly did you find, and what were the options that you know about on the car?
So it is a 2004 911 C4S Arctic Silver over black with a manual. I should have grabbed the little spec sheet with all the numbers, but it's had the Bose radio, not the bass one. There's like a middle Bose radio. Okay. It didn't have the double DIN one. And then I think it has a sports exhaust. Definitely makes a change. I really like that. I think it has the better headlights too.
Has the electronic headlights or xenon headlights? Then I forget whether they were xenons. Were they?
Not really sure.
Probably xenons.
Yeah,
I don't know. 996
xenons.
electronic or xenons? Maybe it's xenons. Which is the two things that we always talk about on the podcast. The two main things that you want are good headlights. You want a manual, and you want exhaust, sports exhaust.
Yeah,
really,
definitely.
Those 3 options to me are the key options in any 911. Even if you're looking at a new one today.
I think the one thing, two things I really wish it had were the color matched hardback seats, because those look so cool from the back. You get to see the pop of color inside. And the one thing I really wish it had was the auto dimming mirrors.
Oh, right.
Because it's just the perfect height to where there's everyone drives trucks around here, and so your eyes just get murdered at night by somebody behind you. But also, the other thing, too, is you can easily piggyback off of that to pretty seamlessly put up a radar detector and get power from there, and then you don't have to have batteries or whatever.
Oh, right. The power's there. Yeah.
Yeah. And then as far as things I've done to the car, like I mentioned on Instagram, that I installed the PCCM Plus by itself.
Let's come back to that. Let's just go back to the car, right? So you're buying the car off this guy. He's meticulous. You tell me he air conditions he vacuums or cleans the air conditioning ducts or something.
He would clean once annually. He'd go in with a paintbrush and clean out the air conditioning ducts. And then my favorite receipt that I've got is that he actually had the side and top of the seats reupholstered in genuine Porsche leather to the tune of like $7,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good for you.
Oh yeah.
So now they're fresh.
Glad I didn't have to pay for it.
Exactly. So you're buying from this guy. He's a nice guy. He's had Porsches before. He's an enthusiast, right? He's local in your area. The car's a rare one. What do you do though, Chris? Do you decide that I still need to get an inspection on this car? The thing about PPIs. Did you do an inspection, or you thought it's too good?
Yeah, I knew that one was going to come.
Yeah.
So I did not get an inspection done. So I went off with the what you often say is buying the seller.
Yes.
So I definitely bought the seller on this one. And then on top of that, there was 20 guys in Tucson, never mind everyone online, lined up behind me to buy this car.
Right. And
so I pretty much just trusted him and went for it. And, it wasn't too bad. At the 70,000 mile-ish point, a lot of cars tend to need some big maintenance items. With the first time I took in for service at the dealership here, it ended up needing, I think it was a water pump and the spark plugs. So kind of a big first bill.
That's it though.
But that was it. So and those are pretty normal. You would expect those at about that mileage.
Yeah, and I think what you just said is we always go on about PPIs, but in that situation when you do find a car that's quite rare and you know there's other people wanting it, you have to sort of make a quick decision, don't you? And that's what you did. And it's emotional as well because you want the car, but it's also because of the fact that this guy has looked after it. You said the IMS was done, so he had the receipts for the IMS as well.
Yeah.
So, major things. So you're going to be hit with a bill. You're going to get a bill of some sorts, but that bill is going to be, like you said, it's going to be for general 60,000 mile, 100,000 kilometer, maintenance items, which water pump common, spark plugs common. Did it need new tires or anything like that, or the tires were okay?
No, the tires were fine. I think I got another probably year or so on the tires. I ended up having to replace some of the front tires because of a different incident we can get into involving hitting a rock on my way to work. But that's definitely my biggest piece of advice is do not hit rocks.
So let's go back to that day though. So you go to his house, you look at the car, you manage to get the funds to him pretty quickly. Yeah. Tell the listeners, and we always like to know that first drive, that first experience driving it out of the guy's driveway, driving it back home. Did you take the long way home, or did you wait for a better day to take it for a spin?
That first drive home, it was because I just set up financing, and that was Sunday. I got I tried to put in for funding on that day and got approved through Wells Fargo, and then we just met at a Wells Fargo after work on Monday evening, and did everything, got him the check, and then we got it, got everything notarized and everything. It was right at sunset, and driving home. Oh man, it was amazing. It was only the second Porsche I'd ever driven. The first one was a Cayenne Turbo, might have been a Turbo S.
Okay.
That one of my dad's friends had and let me drive up in Scottsdale. And then I'd ridden in a 944, but this was the first 911 I'd ever ridden in or driven. And it was just as cool as everyone said. And I remember I pulled off on kind of like this windy road that we have here in Tucson, and it was sunset, and I just had to take a picture of it and
just look at the car. Yeah.
Oh, it was amazing. That's still one of my favorite pictures. The first one I took it after I bought it. And, after that, it wasn't too long before I was up on Mount Lemmon, which we'll get to at whenever you talk about driving roads here at the end. But I'm pretty much immediately, I was taking it out to go enjoy it.
Okay. So you've owned the 911 for how long now? 2 years almost.
Yeah. Well, no, almost 3.
Almost 3 years.
3 in April.
You had to get that first bit of maintenance done when you picked it up. Yep. How has the ownership experience been since then? Have any other issues come up that you've had to fix with the car, or has it been very reliable?
Well, the main one was, like I alluded to before, with the rock. So I was driving to work one morning, and there's a quarry near my work, and they've got dump trucks coming and going all the time, and they put all sorts of crap on the road. And so I'm driving along to like 60 miles an hour on a 2-lane road. There's a full line of traffic coming the other way. This rock the size of about a softball comes rolling directly across my lane.
Wow.
I didn't try to avoid it or anything. I just held on.
Yeah.
Bam, hit it. And so I drove through it, didn't pop a tire or anything. I get in, I go drive to work. As soon as I park it, I dive on the ground. I'm looking under the car trying to see where, because I nailed that thing.
Yeah.
And so, I couldn't see any leaks. I couldn't see any obvious dents.
Mm-hmm. And
so I was like, well, I guess maybe it just hit the floor and I got lucky. So after that, my girlfriend and I went on a big trip through California, which we can get to later, but lots of driving. And then after that, I took it in for a service, and they said, oh, you're coming up on the brakes. And I asked them how much it was going to be. And they quoted me like $3,500. And I said, no way, I'll do that myself. And so I bought a lift and was doing the brakes myself. And I took off the front passenger wheel and I found where the rock hit. So it hit on the inside lip of the front passenger wheel.
Right.
And dented that in. I'd been driving on it for maybe 3,000 miles. Hadn't even realized. I'm amazed it didn't cause a vibration. And took a pretty good chunk out of the sidewall, which I was very, very scary, especially considering the trip we'd been on.
Yeah.
And so had to buy a wheel, had to buy a tire, ended up buying the other front tire, just, so they matched. And then that was in summer 2019. And then I think about January 2020, I take it in for another service because on another trip up to Idaho, the radiator had started leaking.
Okay.
And so when that happened, I called up the Porsche dealership in Boise, and they said, well, they're not going to have a radiator for a 17-year-old car at that point. And so they're like, well, if it didn't barf out all of its coolant, then you'll probably be okay to limp it home. So I went and bought some extra coolant from them, and I did get it home, but I set up an appointment at the dealership here. And so I get it in there, and they're like, yeah, the radiator's toast, but hey, we noticed your front differential's also leaking.
Oh, right. And
so to get those seals are a wear item.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Let's go ahead and do that. Well, when they try to get in there, you have to completely blow apart the front suspension because of the axles.
Right.
And so that's when they figured out that the lower control arm was basically welded into the wheel carrier, right, which I'm pretty sure happened because of the impact.
Yeah.
And so the wheel carrier by itself is $1,000. And they told me I got the last one in North America.
Wow.
And the wheel carrier plus the seals plus the radiator was a very painful trip.
That's a very big one.
That was a big one.
Because the radiators alone are quite expensive, aren't they? So I've heard they're quite expensive.
Having done some other stuff in that area myself now, I kind of wish I'd done the radiator myself. It wouldn't have been so bad. Like you can get them off FCP Euro. I think it was like, it might have been $450 for the OE Porsche one. You could get the non-branded one for like $3 something.
I've seen someone do that online. Actually, it doesn't look that difficult with someone that's mechanical. That's for sure, to change the radio, to change the radios.
Yeah.
Did that happen from stones though, Chris? Is that why the radiator was damaged, or was it leaking from one of the hoses?
No, it was just leaking. No, it was leaking right where the plastic bits on the side meets the aluminum core in the middle, which is any modern radiator. That's usually where they're going to leak.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was a very painful experience. And then to follow it up, that was January of 2020. In like October of 20, or it might have been September of 2020. I'd been on another road trip, and I noticed a pretty distinct pull in the suspension. And we take it in, and it's that same corner that they'd done all that work on, and there's a problem with the caster, I believe, which is like the one thing that's not adjustable in those suspension from the factory, unless you've got the GT 312 control arms, which is a pretty common upgrade. And so they had my car for 2 months.
Wow. So what were they changing? What was the part they're changing though?
So they were just fussing with the alignment, and they changed out a lot of eccentric bolts, and it just stumped them for about a month. Right. And then they handed it over to another guy who used to work at the dealership, now works for the same company at the Audi dealership right next door. Right. And then he fixed it. And then they were moving my car around in the shop, and they ran it into a parked Cayenne.
What?
Yes. The service manager ran it into a parked car, and they ended up repainting the whole front bumper for me and redoing the PPF on there. But
how did you feel about that though? Was that enough compensation for you? I know they have to fix it, but was that enough compensation, since they've this car probably hasn't had a front end respray, right?
It had, actually.
It had?
So that lessened the blow a little bit. Is the original owner had the front resprayed, just because he I was doing a lot of trips back and forth to California, and there's just so many little rocks here on the road that it really got stone chipped a lot. And so he had it resprayed. So it was not original paint, which definitely makes it hurt a little less. But yes, it was very, very frustrating. Fortunately, I had a loaner Macan through that whole deal. So I put 1,800 miles on their car.
That's crazy. 2 months. Your 911's in there for 2 months while they're trying to work this out. So they just couldn't work it out.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then they had to fix it, and then the front end damage. So does this make you want to download the 996 workshop manual and start thinking, hey, I'm going to, I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Am I going to start doing more repairs to my car? Is this what you start thinking?
So, with a lot, I'm a mechanical engineer, and so I can fully appreciate, and I also specifically, I design custom tools.
Right.
So a lot of the special tools that they would use on these cars. I have an appreciation for that kind of stuff. And alignment is something that, I just won't touch alignment, because that's too, the new equipment that they have is so specialized that I'm just going to pay somebody to do that. But I do a pretty good amount of stuff myself. Like I got myself this thing called a quick jack.
Right.
And I bought that when I did the brake job, and I use that thing all the time. I've got a second set of wheels for the car, and I'm, with a cordless impact, if you're quick about it, you can change a set of wheels in half an hour.
Yeah. So let's talk about the things you've added to the car. Let's not talk about the things that have gone wrong. Let's talk about the fun things, the things you've added, the options or the non-factory options. What have you added to the car since you've owned the car, Chris?
So I added the function first shift kit.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah. That was a pretty easy deal. I think there was a definite improvement.
Right.
It was like, I can't remember. I did that pretty early on. I think it was like $200-ish.
A few hundred.
Just something. Do it on the counter in the kitchen. It was fine.
Can I ask you a question before you go further? Do you have the short shift kit in your Carrera 4S, or is it just the normal shifter? Is it
just
longer
normal
throw?
One.
Normal one.
Normal one, yeah. And then I have the other set of wheels, like I mentioned. Those are the 993 Turbo Twists that I bought them off eBay, and they were somebody else's spare wheels, and I repainted them myself, just with did it on the backyard with some Rust-Oleum, and came out pretty well. And then put some nice fresh center caps on there, and the Continental DWS 06s. And that also I have to run. So for the fronts, they don't clear the calipers.
Right. I was wondering about that. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't. So for the backs, they clear just fine. But the fronts, you have to run at least it's really close. It's like you can get away with like a 5 or a 7 millimeter spacer, but I ended up going with a 15 millimeter spacer from Flat 6.
Okay.
And I did that because it comes as a nice kit. It comes with the longer bolts, the wheel bolts, and it really made the fitment quite nice on the front. And I'd bought only one set for the front initially, just for the space. And then I saw the rears; they were all sucked in there, and I was like, "Oh, that doesn't look good." So I immediately had to buy the other ones.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I got the spacers on those, and those ones are great. Those tire, I really like those tires. Those are my winter tires. They're not full on like snow tires, but they're the most aggressive all seasons that Continental will sell you. And they do great in the snow.
What are they called again, Chris, the tires?
The DWS 06.
And that's what you have on your car now?
Well, that's for the winter set. My silver wheels, those are PS2s, the Porsche spec Michelin PS2s.
So the black wheels that are on your car now, the winter wheels, they're the ones you bought.
Yeah.
They're the second set. They look really cool. They look very, very cool.
Yeah, I like, I go back and forth. I like the contrast with the black, but the silver's definitely grown on me. I've actually got the silver on there right now. I swapped it right after I got back from Colorado recently.
Right.
And one of my main Porsche buddies, Anthony, he always advocates for the silver ones, and I've had those black ones on for about the last 2 months, and having the silver ones back on, I really like them. But as far as other mods, I've got the Yakima ski box. It's the Skybox Low.
Right.
And it's the longer one that they offer. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are aware of Brock, who does 996 Road Trip on Instagram.
Yes.
Yeah, so I pretty much ripped off a lot of his stuff that he runs. So he also does the 993 turbo twists, and then that was the ski box he had originally. I think he's like partnered with Yakima now or something, and they sent him a newer one. But and then the Porsche roof bars, which fortunately they still make.
Okay,
so I was able to get those. Let
me ask you a question about this, because I had Owner Stories, which is number 64, I think it is, with Lorenzo. Mm-hmm. He's got a box. He's got the toolbox, or Toolie, however you pronounce it, toolbox, and he's got it on Porsche racks as well. It's better to put it on Porsche racks, right? Porsche bars, than putting it on the aftermarket bars of Toolie or someone else, or not?
I think Porsche may be the only ones that sell those bars.
Are they?
When I was looking into it, and it's like $500. There's a whole system for it. It's one bolt of two bolts per bar, so one on each end, and you flip up the little hatch there, and you bolt it right on there. So I was not about to screw with any kind of like one of those ones that clamp onto the edge of the rain gutters or whatever.
Yeah.
But so what about it's stuff?
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go for it.
What about the box though? Why did you pick that brand?
So I went with the Yakima. Two big things that sold me on it. Number one, there was a big sale happening at REI, so I was able to get it like 20% off. Right. And then number two, it opens from both sides.
Ah, okay.
Which is really nice. It's with how low the car is. I've thought about it. If it only opened from one side, it'd be a huge pain in the ass to try to work the clamp mechanism to put it on there and to reach stuff. It's just nice to have it open from both sides.
And it's got to, I'm asking you these questions because I'm a bit of a fan of the roof box, as I don't know whether you know, and I've been thinking about putting one on my car. So it's quite low profile though, isn't it? It's a very low profile. It seems a lot lower profile than the Tool ones.
Yeah. So this one is the Carbonite, Skybox Carbonite Low. So it's specifically the lower height one. And, I took it up to Colorado this year, and we took it off of my car and we put it onto my mom's RAV4, and we're able to easily fit 3 people's kit for a day of skiing in there. So it's plenty big. You can fit all sorts of stuff in there. It's great. I love it.
Looks great. Fantastic. And it means you can have fun with the car. You can drive the car whenever you want, really, because you've got the storage space. And with the storage spaces, like there's a ton of space behind the seats. True. Like that big trip my girlfriend and I went on in 2019, we didn't have the box, and we were in the car for 10 days all through California. And, we put everything behind the seats, and it's just so much easier to throw it in the box. Yeah. And you don't have everything stuffed inside, and, it's out of your view, and it's just a lot easier. So with the box on the roof, though, on a 911, do you have to be conscious of your speed? Do you hear the noise? Is there any limitations to it, or there's no limitations at all? Obviously you have to pack it correctly, right? You have to weight it properly. Yeah. With the noise, you do notice any 911 is pretty loud with road noise anyway. Yeah. You've got such the wheels on my car, the silver ones are 11 inches wide. So you run 295s, and they're pretty loud. And so there is some more wind noise. It doesn't really affect mileage, Brock 996 road trip. He always says it only, subtracts 1 or so from his mileage. And, when I did my most recent trip, I made sure to reset the computer and everything and check my mileage. I was getting almost 25 miles per gallon. Wow. And as far as speed, doesn't make any difference. No, I've taken it up to go to jail speed, and it was just fine. That's fine. Okay, good to know. Going back to 996 road trip, I don't know what about his suspension that he runs on his car? Is that something that you've been looking at? Would you change your suspension, or you're finding it's okay for the journeys you're doing? He has it slightly lowered, actually. I've thought about that. I've thought about going. I wouldn't lower it. Right. The stance does look good, lowered a little bit, but it's plenty low as it is. I'm on my 3rd front lip, so I'm pretty okay with how low it is right now. I think
if I was going to do anything, I might want to go to like a KW variant, one of those, and have it tuned up nice. But for this car, I want to keep it around. It's such a good all around car. Eventually, once I'm done with, I'm doing a master's right now. I'm doing an MBA,
right?
And I'd like to go on and get into management, or maybe get into a startup or start my own company or something. And eventually, in some hopeful future where I have enough money to have another Porsche, I'd like to get something a little bit more hardcore, like a GT3, and keep this as a nice everyday car. So I don't really want to make it any more harsh than it is.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is, having the two sets of wheels, there's a huge, it's really cool experiencing the car on different tires, because there's such a huge difference between the Continentals and the PS2s. One thing that's really nice about the Continentals is they're way cheaper. Right. I got that whole set of tires for $600 on Amazon Prime, delivered to my house in 2 days.
Cheap.
And they wear a lot longer too. So with the PS2s, they especially, it's got a little bit of negative camber from the factory, so they eat that inside corner on the rears.
Yes.
And so, I don't worry about it at all with the Continentals. If I've got to replace the rears on that one, whatever.
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the PCCM Plus though, because I know there's a lot of 996 owners that listen to the podcast.
Oh yes.
And a lot of 996 owners are hesitant to get it because they go, it's way too expensive. Can you believe Porsche charged me that much to install that? It's crazy. But I really like it, but I just can't do it. Tell them what you did.
Yeah. So my, like I mentioned, I'm in grad school. And so I am trying as much.
I'm impressed by this, by the way. I'm very impressed.
As much as I try to save money on all my stupid hobbies, I end up spending money on my car anyway. But I'd seen it come out, and I was like, oh man, that's really cool. I'd like to get that someday. But I was like, $1,200. I don't need to spend that right now. And so what happened is that my cup holder that's right above the radio, it broke. And so I went to go buy a new one, and I bought the new one. I was trying to install it, and I can't remember exactly why, but I needed to take out the radio, and some part of the radio release mechanism was broken, and in my struggles, I cracked the screen on the radio.
Oh, okay.
So my broken cup holder then precipitated into me buying the PCCM Plus. And so and this
was not
online.
On purpose, right? This was not on purpose.
This was definitely not on purpose. I'd actually added a Bluetooth radio thing before, a different one that just had one little interface button, and it had a microphone, and it actually worked pretty well.
Okay.
But I can't remember the brand of that one, and it worked out pretty well. But I cracked that screen, and I just couldn't look at it. So
that was it.
I call up Suncoast, as most people do, because they've got the best prices by far on them.
Yes.
And I ordered the kit, and unfortunately, in their kit, they send you the whole unit, and they also send you the little trim ring to relocate your AC controls. And so with my car, it had a single DIN radio. If you had the double DIN radio originally, it's a little bit easier. But with the single DIN, what you have to do is you have to move the AC controls from the top spot on the stack to the bottom.
Right.
And they send you the little trim ring for that. And then on the bottom stack, mine had the CD holder and a cubby.
Right.
So CD holder above, cubby below. So then you have to also buy a cubby that goes above where your AC is going to be.
Oh, okay.
And then you also have to buy the support frame for the double DIN unit. And I really wish they would have included that on the thing, because going in and trying to do it myself, I quickly discovered that I needed to do that. And I saw there were some people online doing some. They were basically taking a Dremel to the single DIN one, and it just the frame is like $60, and it was easy enough to get, so I just bought it. I didn't feel like screwing around with that. And so you have to buy the cubby for the lower stack, and then you have to buy the frame, the double DIN frame for the upper stack, and then the one irreversible thing I did was that there's a metal frame behind that where there was 2 rivets that I drilled out that have a little support deal for the singled in radio.
Right.
But it was either going to drill out those rivets or I could buy the one for the doubled in, and that one was like $300. So I was like, I'll drill out a couple of rivets for $300. And so that took a little while, as I was figuring out all the parts I needed. And then I finally get it all installed. And the first real big stop that had me freaked out with that was I got it all plugged in. I got everything sorted. Probably the most nuanced bit of the install is where you put the microphone. Okay. And so from the factory, the doubled in radios had a voice control on them. And so there's a spot to the left of the gauge cluster where there's a factory microphone on all cars. They just put them on all of them. It's just not plugged in for a lot. Yeah. And so I had already replaced that when I did the previous Bluetooth unit. Right. And I found a really useful video online on YouTube. And the trick is because you have to take off the cluster. And the trick is to roll down your window and stand outside of the car when you're trying to get all of those all of the wire plugs in for your gauges. Right. And so I'd already done that once before, so that part was pretty easy. But I got everything situated. I put the plug-in unit with your USB and your phone hookup and everything. I put that in my glove box.
Oh, that's good. Because I never like where it's much better when it's hidden away, right? It's always underneath the unit. It looks a bit ugly. Yeah. No, I don't like it. And what's annoying too is the wire length between the head unit and that plug-in box is really short. And so I think on the right-hand drive cars, you don't really have a choice. You kind of have to put it underneath. But on the left-hand drive cars, where it's located, where the plug is on the back of the head unit, you can put it in the glove box. And I put it in there. I put my phone in there. It's great because the previous phone mount I was using was the Renline one. Yes. Which they have a really slick one where you kind of pop off the little knee pad in the passenger side, and it goes in there. And that one was all right, except it's pretty much, it puts your phone exactly where your passenger's knee wants to be. Yeah, true. So my girlfriend was always pretty annoyed with that. But it's a popular mount, though. It's a popular mount. And a lot of people have that mount, that Renline one. Yeah, it works out all right. But I definitely prefer just not having to look at my phone at all. So I plug it in, put it in the glove box. Done. Perfect. Okay, Chris. So how many hours did it take you to do that? If anyone's listening and thinking, we're going to save the $2,000 or the $1,500 installation or whatever the Porsche dealers are charging. I mean, if you've listened to me and you've figured out that you need, I need this frame, I need that, and the other. Oh gosh, I don't know. You could probably do it on one solid Saturday to do it full on. But I'd already had the previous experience of putting that other Bluetooth unit, and also I'm a mechanical engineer. School level 9, school level 10. Yeah. Yeah. And what I was saying is the one big heart-stopping deal was, I finally got it all together. I'm hooking up my phone, and it keeps sending me this little error message of like, sorry, we can't hook up your phone while your car's in motion. Right. And it would not stop. And I'm like, I'm sitting in my garage. What do you want? Yeah. And so finally, I look on the forums. There's all these people trying to figure it out. They're like, oh, maybe it's hooked up to the GPS unit. Maybe it's hooked up to a motion sensor in there. All these theories. People were trying to figure out who is the original manufacturer of the radio, because Porsche isn't making it in Germany. It's some Chinese brand or whatever. And so I'm looking at all this stuff, and finally I call up Suncoast. And I said, hey, this thing's not working. It's saying my car's moving when it's not. And they say, oh yeah, we've gotten a lot of calls about that. What you should do is repin one of the connectors and, really get it in there, make sure it's seated. Right. And it's like, okay, I'm comfortable enough with that. I'll do that. I did it. Same damn thing comes up. Okay. Finally, I do what I should have done the first time. I pop out the SD card, put it back in, and it works. Oh, really? That was it. It was that was it. I'd taken it out, put it back in 5 different times, and finally I pop out the SD card that's in the head unit, put it back in, and it's like, okay, here, you're not moving anymore. Good job. But it's a worthwhile option, isn't it? It's a great, apparently by all accounts, it's a great unit. Oh yeah, no, it's great. I love it.
I listen, Spotify, Audible, it'll run Waze or Google Maps. It's, nice big display. One thing that, I thought about getting a different radio before that came out. And one thing I really liked about the original radio is it had that, kind of nice amber look to it. And it really flowed with the rest of the cabin.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to screw with that. But, the highest compliment is my girlfriend, who's not a car person at all.
Yeah.
She's like, yeah, it looks like, if I hadn't seen the other one, I wouldn't have known any different. It just goes with everything.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
It just fits perfectly. It doesn't disrupt the rest of the cabin.
Yeah, I hope they bring it out for the 997 soon. I'm going to do
sure
it.
They're working on it.
I don't care about the price. I'm just going to do it. I think it's worthwhile.
Yeah. My friend that I mentioned earlier, Anthony, he's got a 993 C2S and a 997 GT3.
Wow.
And he put the PCCM Plus in the 993, and he really likes it. And as soon as they've got one for the 997, he's going to put one in.
Man, that's a great 2-car garage. Has he owned the C2S for a long time? Because they're crazy prices now. Absolutely, even in the US.
He bought it in 2020, and that was like his COVID project, and he got a pretty good price for it. It sounds crazy to telling any normal person what he paid for that it's just insane. But considering he got a good price, and he really loves it. It's actually not just a C2S; it's a Vesuvio edition.
Oh, really?
And there's something like
yes,
13 or 16 in the country. It's a really cool car. I've gotten to drive it once, and
it's crazy though, because I saw this morning I had an email come through from Beverly Hills Car Club that I'm just subscribed to, and they had a 1998 993 C2S for 150,000, 142,000. So
yeah, he was under that, but it's a really cool car.
Fantastic.
But yeah, and
sorry, what else? Anything else apart from the PCCM? That sounds like a big job. You've done that. You've done the. You've got the wheels.
Yeah, I did the wheels, and then the only other thing I've done is Flat 6 Motorsports will sell you an intake elbow.
Right. So
from the factory, it had like a little branch, which I'm told is just for resonance. And so I bought it from them, and I also bought a nice BCM, something like that, filter.
Okay.
And BMC maybe.
BCM.
And,
BMC, the filters, yeah. Did they make any difference?
Yeah,
I keep asking. Other people have done that. I haven't
don't
done
know.
mine.
I think it sounded a little better. Maybe it's a little sharper.
Right.
I don't know. It was like $70 for the elbow, and it looks nice. So that's the only real thing I've modified.
Yeah, I keep thinking about changing the filter and putting that filter in because it's such an easy thing, but I don't know. I don't know if it makes any difference. People say yes, some people say no. I don't know. Hey, so what else? Anything else planned? Any other mods, or are you pretty much set? I mean, it sounds like your car's very, very, very sorted.
I don't really plan on doing anything other than once these tires are done, I'm definitely going to put on the PS4s instead of the PS2s.
Okay.
They're a little bit cheaper. Actually, it was kind of weird.
Yes.
But I'm going to go to those next. But anything else, I'd pretty much just going to keep it stock, and then eventually I'll get something a little bit more racy and just keep this as the comfy everyday car. I think probably the more interesting thing to talk about is all the trips I've done. Yeah,
we're going to talk about that. But with the tires, though, I think Steve did that. He changed his GT3. He changed his Cup 2s, and he put the PSS4s or whatever they call it on it, just for better all-round sort of weather, grip.
He
says they're pretty good. He reckons they're pretty good. And I just watched that Chris Harris video. I don't know if you've seen it. There's a video on YouTube, Chris Harris, where he's talking about his 911 GT3 touring.
Oh, yeah, I just watched that.
Did you watch that? And he said the same thing, that he's put those tires on there as well.
Everything I've ever heard about Cup 2s is like, yeah, they're really great if the weather's perfect and you're going to drive them hard for a very short amount of time. But other than that.
So let's get onto the drives, because there's pictures on your Instagram, and I want people to go and look at your Instagram again. C_Klaus Klaus. That image that you post, the last image, which may not be the last image when people are listening to it, but the image from December 27. You're driving in the snow. You got the black wheels on. You got the roof box.
Yep.
What drives are planned? Where is that drive happening? That image, where's that taken?
That was up in Colorado. My grandma's got a cabin up there. We went up there for Christmas, and that was just near her cabin. I dragged my brother out and made him stand out in the snow and take pictures of me. But that was a fun one. the next trip, I don't really know. I'm just kind of busy figuring out when I'm going to be done with I'll be done with grad school here in August, so we haven't really planned the next trip. But like the first big trip was back in summer of 2019. In the before times, my girlfriend and I. So I went out to LA for a couple of days and hung out with my brother who lives there, and we went to the PEC there,
right?
And then we drove directly from there to the Peterson Museum.
Oh, beautiful!
Which I can't. I
want
can't
to go
recommend
there.
it highly.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
And I was so sad because I missed the big Porsche exhibition they did. I bought the coffee table book from it, but I missed the actual exhibition. And we did. If you go, you have to do the vault tour.
Yeah.
And actually, at a recent thing, I met a guy who does the vault tours. He was really cool. But yeah, we did that, and then my girlfriend flew in, so we drove from LA down to San Diego and spent a couple days there. And then we went from San Diego up Highway 1 all the way to Monterey. And quite romantically and dumbly, I wanted to stay on Highway 1 as long as possible, which through LA was a complete mistake. It was absolutely miserable. But we cleared all of LA, and I've done it. Now I never have to do it again. But we drove up Highway 1 to Monterey, and it was absolutely beautiful. We stopped off a couple times. We saw the elephant seals and all that kind of stuff. And but the problem was there's a lot of traffic, and so it was a long day. And it's all traffic: first, second gear, first, second gear, first, second, second, first.
It's not fun, is it? I keep saying this is not fun. No,
it wasn't. And I got horribly dehydrated. Right. Like we got to the hotel in Monterey, and I just collapsed. And my girlfriend's a nurse, so she kind of helped out a little bit, but I still felt like crap. And so we spent the night in Monterey, and then we drove up to Yosemite from there. There's a picture of that on my Instagram, and we pretty much just drove through Yosemite and stopped off at saw the sights. And I'm a big rock climber, so I can point out all the stuff up there. So I was geeking out, but we went through there, we camped out, and that was pretty cool. I wanted to do more camping, but it was right around the 4th of July, and everything along Highway 1 is first come, first serve. So it's kind of a crapshoot to try to find a camping spot.
I was going to ask you that question because you just said camping.
Yeah.
And we know you can get the roof tent for the 996. Would you do it?
I am anti-roof tent. I am ground tent all the way. So when I was growing up, I was in Boy Scouts, and so my whole childhood was camping around New Mexico, and so I am perfectly fine sleeping on the ground. And one of my buddies from engineering school, Phil, he's got a Toyota Tacoma. He lives up in the Denver area, and he's into kind of the overlanding stuff, and he had a roof tent for a while, right? And he sold it. So I'm distinctly team ground tent because it's cool. It's a lot lighter, costs way less,
easy to get into.
I don't, it is nice having it's always going to be a flat spot, but then you also have to park the car in a flat area. Yeah. It's just so much easier to do a ground tent.
Here's a question I want to ask you, and I didn't ask you, and I've just seen the picture on your Instagram, and it's made me remember. There's a picture you took on June 16, 2019, where your car is covered in dust, and it says something like 30 miles on dirt. And I want to go back to the car that you purchased. You purchased it from this guy. He cleans his air conditioning ducts with, Windex or whatever it is. It's meticulous. He doesn't drive it in the rain. Were you worried when you bought this car, because it was so cared for and it was reasonably pristine, that you didn't want to get it? Was it too precious? Was it going to be something too precious you didn't want to get dirty? Was that ever something that you thought about, Chris?
If you look, so it was taken care of very well, and I am very obsessive about cleaning. I right behind my screen here, I'm looking at my just wall of cleaning supplies. So I've got my pressure washer, everything. So I'm really big on doing that stuff myself. But it's not going to stop me from using the car. And the thing is, it wasn't, maybe if this was a 15,000 mile car, okay, I could see it at that point. But it's a 67,000 mile car. Now, just on the way back from Colorado, it turned over 97. I put 30,000 miles on it.
Wow.
So that's fantastic. It wasn't going to stop me.
You put 30,000 miles already. You're up to 97,000 miles. Wow, that's fantastic.
97. And so I can see that argument, but I bought a Porsche because I want to drive it. Yeah. And I was not gonna, I felt like, I definitely had that hesitancy of like, oh man, this guy would be pretty pissed if he knew what I was doing with this car.
That's what I was thinking. I'm thinking, you're doing that conversation with the guy, telling him you're going to be a good custodian of his precious 9 Carrera 4S.
I mean, I think I've been a good custodian.
But you have.
It looks great still. Yeah. I challenge anyone to come up to it at a Cars and Coffee, and there are some stone chips, but it's very well taken care of.
As you know, I'm just joking. Yeah. It means that you drive it really well. You're enjoying the car. You're still cleaning it. You still got that thing that we all do. That all the products. That craziness where we buy product after product.
When I got back from Colorado, the next morning it was up on the lift, wheels off, scrubbing in the wheel wells, making sure everything was real clean. I scrubbed as much as I could on the underside. I waxed it right before I left on that trip.
Oh, okay.
And so I do take really good care of it. And it's got PPF for most of the front clip, the front bumper, and then halfway up the hood. And of course there's stone chips right behind where it stops on the hood. But
yeah, of course.
Oh, well, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
But no, I am very,
but there's such minor things, like you said, you can get it covered in dirt, you can wash it, you can clean it, you can take the wheels off. Everything is, most things like that they're not such a big deal, are they? Really, they're not such a big deal. So we touched on the drives. We're getting to the end of the podcast, but we touched on the drives. But if someone's coming to Tucson, if someone's coming to your region, are there some fantastic roads there that you would recommend for Porsche owners or sports car owners to go out and drive on?
So the big one here in Tucson, anyone who lives here, is Mount Lemmon, the scenic byway up there. And I driven all over it on the motorcycles before I got the car. And the thing with Mount Lemmon is, it's a fun road. Unfortunately, it's also extremely popular with bicyclists. And so you got to be real careful about avoiding them. But the problem is that there's a town up on top. And so because of that, there's the sheriff's department who's patrolling it the whole time, and the speed limit is 35.
Right.
And so it's pretty heavily enforced, but it is a pretty fun road. There are some other fun little roads. Like I enjoy a trip down to Patagonia, Arizona. So I'll go down there for coffee sometimes. My girlfriend likes to go down on that drive. Or another fun drive from Tucson. It's a bit of a hike, but you can go do the road up to the Kitts Peak Observatory. Right. And that's a really fun road. And that one has a little bit less traffic because there's not a town on top of it. But I've done a pretty good amount of driving around here. I'm trying to think of other fun ones, but Mount Lemmon is really the main one.
Okay, so you're in a good region then. It's a good region for driving. I mean, there's plenty of roads nearby, so there's lots of fun to be had. What about driving overseas? Is that something that's on your bucket list to do, to go and take a Porsche and drive it in Europe somewhere, hire a car? Is that something you'd like to do?
Yeah. Back before the turbo V6s came in, I used to be super, super into Formula One. And, once it became the Mercedes show, I was pretty much done watching. But
I still watch it.
I watched the last race. I watched that one. That one was good. But I was quite happy to see Hamilton lose. But because I used to be a big Ferrari fan. But because that season when Kimi won was pretty formative. And but of course, I'd love to go do the Nürburgring and go see Spa. And so I think kind of like a dream scenario is maybe if I could take my dad and my brother over to over to Germany and go see the Nürburgring 24 and go to Spa and see all that stuff. Go to Stuttgart and see the Porsche Museum and the Mercedes Museum. I'm not really into Mercedes, but everything I've ever heard is that the Mercedes Museum is a must see.
Yeah, that's what I've heard as well. My friend's been there, but that's what I heard as well. Is Mercedes is very, very good. And Spa is just one of those places we all want to go to, isn't it? I think it's because we're Formula One. I mean, you're a Formula One guy. I follow Formula One for years, and Spa is just one of those tracks. Like if I ever go watch one of them in Europe, I want to go to Spa. You know what I mean? It's
just to see them go through Eau Rouge.
Exactly.
That's the whole thing.
Exactly. And you know what? The fact that you ride bikes, it must help you in the 911 because when you ride a motorcycle, and I have a motorcycle license, I don't have one anymore. But it's that looking forward, isn't it? It's looking ahead, looking at the corner. Do you feel like there's something from your skills as a motorcycle rider that actually make you a better 911 driver?
Yeah, I do think so. Like I said, I only had the bike through most of college. Yeah. And so pretty early on, I started riding with a bunch of guys who were all actually my dad's age, but they would all hang out at this one cafe in town, and I'd go hang out with them every Sunday, and then we'd take a little ride up to Hatch, New Mexico, which had like 4 interesting corners, but those guys were on it the whole way, and so I learned to ride quick pretty early on, and it was so funny because I never rode with anyone my own age for like 4+ years. And then I finally did, and I'm on my bike, which has 70 horsepower on a good day, and I couldn't even keep him in my mirror. But yeah, I do think that there's some transfer over there. Right. But that's been the kind of the continuing deal with being the younger guy in this space, because I was a young guy with bikes, and now I'm the young guy with cars, because I'm a member of the local PCA group here, which is really great. I didn't really get involved with them until 2020 because the first year they accidentally sorted me into the Phoenix group, and I just didn't bother to fix it until it was time to renew my membership. But I started off with Zoom meetings with them, and that was nice. And then we finally started doing some little drives here and there. And then,
fantastic.
The big one I did is they have the Treffen events. So they actually had one last May here in Scottsdale, and I went up to that with my friend Anthony and his wife, and we had a really good time. And they have the guided drives and stuff, and one of them was up to Sedona, and I've been to Sedona, so that one was kind of whatever. It's really pretty, and there's actually a lot of really good rock climbing up there. But the other drive we did, which was definitely a lot more fun, is we went to this little town called Jerome, right? Which was just, carved out of the side of a hill, this little mining town. And the drive up there was kind of whatever, because with the PCA, they're a real corporation, so they've got insurance and rules for everything. Yeah. And so how it works is you go exactly the speed limit, and you have lunch, and then you're on your own to get back. Right. And so for that drive back, that was one of the best drives I've ever had. It was me, Anthony was in a C2S, and then there's this guy, Fred, who was from California. He was in a Boxster Spider. Oh, okay. Nice. And that drive back, we were on it the whole time, and it was just so much fun. Through the corners, you've got, your buddy ahead and behind, and through the traffic coming down 17, it was just so much fun. It was, nice weather and everything.
They're the best sort of drives, aren't they? They really are.
Oh yeah.
And 3 people as well, 2 other cars. I think that's just the right number as well.
Yeah. And, I never really considered the Boxster before, because, if I'm going to have an open air experience, I've got motorcycles for that. I never really cared for convertible cars. I always wanted a coupe. Yeah. And, with that drive and seeing that car, I definitely, the Boxster Spider went way up in my book. There's one for sale actually at the dealership here in town, which of course I can't afford. But
you sure you can't afford it? The Spider, that'd be a great combination with your car. You could have a great 2-car garage then, Chris. That's perfect.
Well, let's finish my MBA first, and then.
No, the Spider is one of those cars that creeps up on you. You don't sort of notice it. I don't know what generation
really consider it.
Yeah, and then David, who's been on Owner Stories before from New Zealand, who's had air cooleds, and he bought a red one not long ago, and he keeps posting on Instagrams, and I keep looking at it, going, man, that's so cool. I think it's a 981 maybe. I think it's a 981.
there's several of the newer ones at Treffen, and they definitely caught my eye.
Yeah.
That one was just, it was a GT Silver, but it was that was a really fun drive.
Yeah. No, that you can't overlook them. That's for sure. They're quite cool, and they sound pretty good, and they look good, I reckon. But I went on a great drive the other week with Steve and with Marco, who's been on Owner Stories here in Sydney. Marco in his 996 Turbo.
Yeah.
And that 996 Turbo, I have to tell you, the speed yellow in that car. Speed yellow is one of those colors, you have to really see it properly in real life. And I've seen them, but I've never really sort of looked at it closely. It's such a great color, and it changes so often. We met at 6 in the morning, and it was completely different. And then the sun came out in here in Australia, and it was just, it's such a great color in the Turbo. It really is. And that 996 shape, like the front of your car, with the big ducts, it's just a great shape.
See, what's funny is, with as much as we like to nerd out about Porsche colors, I'm actually colorblind.
Okay.
So, I can't see purple, and I mess up a lot of other things, but I still really enjoy talking about, the various nuances with colors and everything. Yeah. And I think, I go back and forth. If I could spec a new GT3,
yes,
I think I'd have to have the wing, and obviously I'd have to have a manual. Yes. I think I'd get bucket seats too.
Yes.
And I want green, and I go back and forth between greens. I
Which
really
green?
like
old greens or new greens. Ice green. Ice green's a good color.
Oh, see, I like jade.
Yes.
And I signal green is always a classic, and then light green, the Hellgrün. That one's a really
that's
good
a
one.
great color. Did you see Lee Keen, who does the Keen Safaris?
That gold.
Did you see his one?
That thing is so cool.
Oh my god.
Oh man.
And did you see
with
the
the
seats?
Pasha interior?
Yeah.
Yes.
The seats that were done by Justin Plasek in Austria, the inserts. He does the inserts. I think Steve got a quote actually for the inserts for his GT3 from Justin for a different fabric. Mm-hmm. But that gold with the Pasha inserts.
Oh man, that car is so cool.
He's just nailed it, hasn't he? He's just got the perfect spec.
Has. And what? So there was that movie that came out, the Gucci movie with like Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
And like going into that, I was like, there's got to be some cool cars in this, and there was that 924 with the Passion interior.
I haven't seen it. I have to watch it.
The like weird cousin that Jared Leto plays. He drives a 924
Pasha
with the brown Pasha interior, and I saw that and I was like, oh man, that's so cool. And of course there had to be a Countach, and I asked my girlfriend afterward, which was her favorite car, and she notices Porsches on the street now,
right? Because
she I don't shut up about them, and so and I asked her what her favorite car was, and she was like, oh yeah, that black one that the lawyer drove, and I was like, you do know that's a 911 Target, right? And she's like, oh, okay, cool. I was like, I guess I've trained you well.
There you go. Air cooled is coming. You know what's nice about Lee Keen's car, though, is that most people who get GT3s get the Pepita seats. Most people spec Pepita, don't they? Or tartan. You know what I mean? That's what they do in the inserts. And he did Pasha. And I think that's what's cool about it. The gold with that Pasha, the Pasha seats just looks really, really cool.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah.
I've got through COVID, I've one of my favorite masks I've worn is a Pasha one that I bought from like Blip Shift or something. And
really?
People see it, they're like, oh, that's kind of trippy. And then I'm secretly just being a car nerd over here.
Very cool. Chris, we've almost gone to an hour and a half. We have to finish. Is there anything else? Is there anything else you'd like to share with the listeners before we end today?
I do have a watch. I can talk about watches.
Oh, the watch. Let's finish on the watch. A lot of Porsche guys are also watch guys. Everyone knows I've got a bit of an obsession with watches. What are you wearing today?
So, initially the first watch that kind of caught my eye that really interests me in mechanical watches, I'm a mechanical engineer, so it's kind of a easy step there, but it was definitely the Speedmasters, especially like with the space connection there.
Yes.
But then, honestly, it was Matt Farah was talking about like, oh man, Speedmasters aren't waterproof at all. You got to be careful even just washing your hands. And I was like, that's too much of it's too fussy. And so I looked into other Omegas because I really like, just kind of the reserved design of Omegas. And then come to find out one of my great grandpas that I'm partially named after, he wore an Omega.
Okay.
Back in the 50s. And so I kind of decided, I like the GMT complication.
Yes.
And so what I ended up buying was a Seamaster 50th Anniversary GMT, which was made from like 97 to like late 2000s.
Okay.
And I bought it off of, I think it was Crown and Caliber.
Okay.
And that was a pretty good buying experience. And then more recently, I bought my girlfriend for her graduation. I bought her a Seiko Prospex that was, it's kind of a throwback to the 1959 Alpinist with the cream dial. And that's a super pretty watch. Very
they're
happy
good
with that one.
watches. They're good watches. Yeah. I really like Omega. I've got two Omegas and they're old ones. I've got the Speedmaster, which is a 70s one, mid watch. And I've got a 75 Flightmaster, which needs a bit of work at the moment. It's just the bracelet's broken and the bracelet's original, so it's very hard to get it repaired. But with Omegas, what I really like is if you have an old Omega and you want it restored properly, you can actually send it to Switzerland. You can get them to do it in Switzerland at the factory.
Oh, yeah. My dad had bought an Omega for my mom, I think for one of their earlier anniversaries. And it was just, a little ladies quartz watch. And he, after I caught the watch bug, he also kind of caught the watch bug and actually bought more than me. But he went and bought basically pretty much the exact same watch that Pierce Brosnan wore when he was Bond, that blue. That's quite a nice watch. Seamaster.
Yeah, I know that one.
Yeah, he got that one in quartz, but he also sent my mom's watch off to get fixed.
Right.
And went through that whole program, and it worked pretty well for him.
Yeah, in Switzerland they have, if you have like a Flightmaster, because the Flightmaster, I don't know whether you're familiar with it, has a very big case. And the case has the lines, the machining lines on the outside. And if you send it to Switzerland, they actually have the machine and they redo the case for you so they can actually restore it. Apparently.
I wonder how much they take off for that.
But I don't know how much they take off. That was the thing that I was thinking about, right? So you can choose if you want to keep the dial. I mean, I wouldn't replace certain things. You can keep the dial because my dial's fine. You can keep the hands. They'll fix up the old bracelet if it's broken because you can't buy the bracelets anymore, the original ones.
See, with mine, it's got that. I know about the how they'll repair your watch, but like mine, the bezel has kind of faded. Originally it was black and silver, and it's faded to a really nice kind of navy for the upper part of the GMT bezel.
That's kind of nice.
I like it.
Yeah,
I don't want them to replace that.
No,
I like the worn in feel on that.
Yeah. But the one thing about Omegas is they're very reliable. I mean, I find, to be honest, and this is really terrible to say, my Flightmaster and my Speedmaster both work. They're both working. They both keep time, and they've never had a service since I've owned them. And I've owned them for 20, and I've owned them for 20 years.
Mine's not going anywhere until it stops.
Yep. Good choice. Good choice, Chris. Good choice. All right. I think that's about it. Thanks for sharing your story today. Thanks for being on Porsche Cooled Owner Stories.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Finally got around to it, but Christmas and all that, everything is crazy. So
I really enjoyed hearing your story. I liked the message you sent me on Instagram. From the very first one when you said you were washing your car and listening to the podcast or something, I think it was. And then you listened to, what was the first one you listened to? You listened to John's story, didn't you? In Norway.
I don't know.
Was it John?
It's been
was
a while.
GT3, I think you said in the message to me or something. Vaguely remember.
I have to look at my Instagram here.
I can't remember. I vaguely remember. I think it was John in Norway with his
oh yeah, that yellow GT3.
Yeah, the yellow John. And John posts the best images on Instagram as well. He's got a good eye.
I like he's got the E88s.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that I'm definitely tempted on is to change up the wheels on my car because the turbo twists, I really like them.
Yeah.
I don't think they photograph well, but there's just so much going on when you actually look at them in person. They've definitely grown on me, but the problem is they're so goddamn heavy. Yeah. And it's just, you can literally go on TireRack.com and buy the cheapest OZs and you save 4 pounds a corner. It's insane how heavy these wheels are. And so, from an engineering perspective, it kind of hurts me just to know how much unsprung mass is on those wheels. So eventually I might want to change the wheels. So I will slightly revise my answer from before. But the E88s are so sweet.
But even John, I remember that when I was speaking to John, he said that was a big investment. That was a big investment for those wheels. They're not cheap.
Oh yeah, no, and that one, it's you're looking at $5,000 for just wheels, and it's there's a lot of things I can do with $5,000.
But they look fantastic, and they're lighter.
They do
you know
look
what I mean?
so
and
good.
Everything will feel better. Everything will feel better.
You know, I've gone back and forth. It's like, do I want to do the gold faces or would I go silver? And you know, I showed my girlfriend the picture with the ones with the gold, and she was like, I don't know. But you know, the silver on silver is definitely grown on me. Yeah. So I might have to go with the silver ones, or maybe if I could get them kind of slightly painted to like a medium gray. Another one I've considered is one that I haven't really seen around too much, but pretty much the only like I said, I read a lot of Speed Hunters growing up, so I'm like very big on wheels and Japanese car culture and stuff too. But like Advan GTs, those 5 spokes.
Yeah.
Oh man, they're so cool. Like the, you know, like TE 37s are obvious, you know, kind of the obvious choice, but like the Advan 5 spokes are really cool. I think those would be neat too. But yeah, that's a problem for future Chris.
For another day.
I finished grad school.
Yeah, I do like the gold wheels though. I mean, Steve's just switched. Steve's got 2 sets of wheels for his 997 GT3. He just, when we went for the drive the other day, he now has his the Weiss gold painted ones on his car. And the Weiss gold is actually a really nice color. I mean, I don't know how it'll work with the silver, with the Arctic silver, but with the white, obviously with Carrera white, it actually works really well.
Oh yeah, that would look cool.
That's a nice color, that's for sure. Chris, really appreciate it. Thanks for coming on. And talking about your Carrera 4S. It's a very cool car. I love the roof box. I love how you drive it. I love how you use it. And you look after it as well. That's the main thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks, Chris. All right, everyone. That's Chris coming in from Tucson, Arizona in the US with his Carrera 4S 996 Arctic Silver. It's got a roof box, very, very cool, and he enjoys his car every day. He drives it. All right, everyone. Thanks for listening. Bye for now.